Hello, Freedom Nation. It's Jeff with another episode of the Freedom Nation podcast. And on today's show, we're going to learn a little bit about a different concept in real estate investing. I have Scott Jelinek on, and Scott started off his real estate investing career in 1994, built a massive portfolio, and pretty much got wiped out going into the 2008 market crash of real estate. And he wised up after that and realized that he started looking at some of the other people in the industry who had survived through that and realized that they were doing something very different. And that's what he modeled. And that's what he teaches today. So I'm really excited to have Scott on. So stay tuned and we'll be right back in just a minute.
All in you. Everything you're looking for, it's all in you. You gotta believe that it's all in you. Everything you're searching for, it's all in.
Hello, Freedom Nation. It's Jeff here, and we are off on another journey of learning about ways to invest and ways to get to your Freedom Day. And today I've got Scott Jelinek on. He is a real estate investor, but he does it a little bit different from a lot of people that I've heard out there. And some of this is from his own experience of going through the ups and downs of the real estate market. So Scott, welcome to the show, bud.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I am excited to be here. Your audience, I think, falls right in line with my whole thought process. That's why I was really looking forward to this.
You've got a vehicle that can plug right into the Freedom Day method. So this is awesome. So why don't we get started, Scott? Tell us your story of how you got to where you're at today.
So we only have 6 hours, so I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but I started buying in 1994. I was a landscaper back then. And
Okay.
back then, and I don't know what year you started buying, but back then there was a thing called non-qualifying assumptions where you were
Yeah.
able to assume someone else's mortgage with the bank's blessing. They ended them in 1987 for FHA and 89 for VA. But when I bought in 94, it was legitimate, like a sub two, but with the bank's blessing, $5,000 down and takeover payments. So shortly after I bought that house, I had no interest in real estate. I bought it to live in.
Hmm.
Shortly after I bought it, a house on my block came up for sale with a white sign, magic marker. It said $2,000 down, take over payments.
Hmm.
And I was pissed. And it had nothing to do, I didn't know anything about values, the balance, equity, repairs. I knew nothing about anything other than I paid $5,000 down and this one was $2,000 down. And so my genius brain said, let me buy that one also. And then I'll cost average out. And I did, and I rented it out. And that was my first time even ever thinking about real estate because every month they would pay me and I would pay the mortgage. And that was the start of it. And I became obsessed with buy as many as I can. I used to call it my McDonald's plan. I said I wanted to buy $1 million worth of properties and then I can go work at McDonald's if I want for 30 years and I'll be a millionaire. That was
There
my
you go.
plan. Mind you, I was a kid, so 30 years didn't seem like a big deal. Now
No.
30 years is a little bit different.
It comes up a lot faster than you used to think.
Yeah. Now I'm not willing to do more than 5. But anyway, so I crushed it with that and I started buying and buying. I got to 84 properties by 2007. And basically everybody taught and still teaches, which I like that you're not one of them that teaches this. Everybody taught and still teaches the leverage model, equity, the refi till you die, all that stuff. And basically, I did all of that. I did everything they said. I pulled out my first 20 properties worth of equity and parlayed it into more and more until 2007 hit. And I got crushed. I had almost $1 million in cash at the time. I had 84 properties and overnight their values plummeted. I had 40% of my tenants not paying. I used up all my money trying to save everything. And then the inevitable happened, right? I lost 55 of my houses to foreclosure.
Ouch.
And this is hard. This is hard on anybody, right? But it's especially hard on me. I'm driving an Escalade that's wrapped in stop foreclosure. And here I am. I have houses in foreclosure. And so it was a rough time. But I remember most people back then went back to their jobs that they had before they got into real estate. And they went back to their previous lives. But I didn't have a previous life. I was a landscaper. And now I had this big lifestyle built around real estate. And I had nothing to fall back on. And so I remember watching, there were certain people who were still crushing it, still doing really well. And these were the old guys who were free. They were the ones who weren't participating in the boom. They were lenders. They owned everything free and clear, which to me back then, you're an idiot. How do you free and clear? You're an idiot. You can make so much more money if, right? And then I had a valuable lesson, which I learned. I said, all of these guys are worth tens of millions of dollars, and they're not playing the same game we were playing with the refining and the leverage and making these little spreads. And so that is when I kind of came up with what we call a slow flip now, which is where these properties were at the lowest prices ever, but I couldn't buy them. I had no credit anymore, and I had no money. So I came up with a plan. How can I pay? I want it to be free and clear, but without any money, you can't just buy them free and clear. So I had to borrow the money. So I came up with a private lending plan where I borrow it, but we pay it off amortized, no balloon, in 5 years.
Okay.
Simultaneously selling them on long-term financing for 30 years. And so that's the basis of the plan is we buy them on 5-year mortgages. We sell them on 30-year mortgages. We sell, believe it or not, to a lot of investors
Hmm.
who I jokingly refer to as 2005 Scott. I always say, everybody's like, well, why would they buy it? I said, because it's me. I would have bought it. I would have bought it then
And all
because there's
over
low
this.
money down. Exactly. I'm like, that was exactly what I was looking for. Low money down. I can make $200-300 a month and deal with all the headaches. I said, now that's not me anymore. Now I'm all about freedom, and all I want to do is collect my checks on the first of the month. I'm not a landlord anymore. And I love what we do now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Going back to that time period, if you could have done it all over again, would you go down the route that you are now? Or do you think you would have gone, no, I've still got to keep doing this?
So I have two answers to that. Knowing what I know now, clearly I wouldn't go down that route because I'm very much against leverage, very much against the debt, very much against all those things that came with it. However, if it meant to still have the mindset that I have now, would I do it all over again to have the same outcome I have now? Well, 100%. I wrote an article once that it was called, I think it was called 5 Reasons Why I'm Thankful for the Bust. And it was interesting because I equate so much of my success now to what I went through with the bust,
Sure.
which changed my mindset. And this is something interesting, Jeff, is I talk about the bust like it was yesterday. And somebody just last week was like, Scott, that was 15 years ago. And I had to stop and think, and I'm like, oh my God, you're right.
Crap, it
That
was.
that's 15 years ago. And to me, it was last week.
Yeah, I remember it being in the financial services industry. Quite frankly, it is very in my brain all the time. Like, okay, that could happen. And it wasn't that long ago, but it was 15 years ago. That's crazy.
And I tell people, I said, your plan, and I mean your plan being the Burr people and the leverage people and all
Yeah.
the refi till you die people, I said, likely will very well work for you. And you'll do great and you'll make a bunch of money. And I'm not saying it won't work. What I'm saying is I'm too old to start over again.
Yeah.
And so if something was to happen again, I'm not participating in it this time. I'm free and clear. I have 178 properties now. 92 of them are free and clear. I have 24 more come free and clear this December. I got 3 payments left. And they're all paid off within 5 years. And so I'm much happier. Could I make more money doing a leverage model? Quite possibly. But the answer that I tell people when they talk about, which I used to say during 2005, Scott would have said, is you can make more money if. The way I answer it, Jeff, would you probably say the exact same thing to your people? I say, it depends on what game you're playing. I said, if you're trying to die with the most money, then you are correct. I said, but if you're trying to live the best life, then my plan's the way to go.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I always answer it.
That's awesome. I love it. And it's one of those things that I guess it comes from the world that I come from. The financial services industry was created by what I call asset gatherers, the mutual fund companies, the brokerage firms, the insurance companies. When you look at what their end goal is, they want to amass the most amount of money that they possibly can. So what do they teach people? Well, the only way to do this is to save tons of money, and then you can get about 4% of that per year as an income stream. So if I want to make 100 grand, I've got to have somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.2 million. And if I'm sitting here at 25 grand and looking at, I got to get to 2.5 million, well, how am I going to, it doesn't seem possible to me. So people just don't do it versus I need, let's say 10 grand a month. How am I going to get there? And your method, I think, is very simple. It's like, all I got to do is find the right property. I have a game plan. I'm guessing with a lot of what you do, you're on the front end of it and you're not having to do, you aren't cleaning toilets. You're not managing the properties.
No
you're
maintenance.
on the backside of it. Yeah.
Yep. There's a saying I often tell people, which I didn't make up. I heard it somewhere, but I say, if you do what's easy, life will be hard. And if you do what's hard, life will be easy.
Yeah.
And slow flips are hard, but only for 5 years. If you don't do them, your life can be hard for the rest of your life. I'm always like, just if you stick it out for 5 years, I have so many people in my program that we have set free and they're already at $10, $20, $30,000 a month. I'm like, the amount of freedom that gives you is insane. And it's 5 years. It's not the 30-year plan like the Berg, all those other guys are doing 30-year mortgages and refining forever and always having to manage payments. I said, it's 5 years, 5 years and you're free.
Yeah. And they're going to write me a check every month and I'm going to turn around. And so,
Yeah.
so you're typically, so I'm just kind of walking through this in my own brain so that everybody understands this. So today, Scott, I go out, I find a property. So what type of property am I looking for typically?
All right. Are you sitting down? I can't tell, Jeff. So I didn't ask you, what part of the world are you in?
I'm in
What part of the
Austin,
country?
Austin,
You're in
Texas.
Austin?
Yep.
Okay, so in Austin, this does not work in Austin,
Okay.
but it doesn't mean it doesn't work. So I have people all over the country, and most markets it does not work in. But what we do is we invest outside of the area. So I live in Virginia Beach, but we have a lot in Virginia Beach from during the bus times. But
Mm,
where we invest now is mostly Midwest. And
okay.
so we're mostly in Missouri, we're in Illinois, we're in Indiana.
Mhm.
We have a lot of guys in Ohio and Alabama. So we're buying properties. And that's why I asked if you were sitting down when I tell you these numbers. We buy properties for $30,000 on average.
Good God.
And people, when they hear that, the first thing they want to say is, "What country do you live in? There's no such thing as a house for 30,000." And I'm always like, "Listen, before you argue with me, spend 3 minutes on the internet. Just
Yeah.
pick a state, go to Illinois or whatever, and go in Zillow and type in under 50,000 or under, and you will see
Mhm.
hundreds of them." And
Yeah.
so, on $30,000, we pay 12% interest to our lenders. So
Yeah.
on $30,000 at 12% interest, amortized for 60 months, your payment comes to 667.33.
Mm,
And that is no balloon. That is principal and interest. It is paid off after 5 years.
got it.
So on average, we sell them at 89,000 and we get 3,000 down and 875 a month. So that
Mm,
875 a month covers our 667. We really don't make any money. However, there's only 60 payments. The 61st payment, it's all ours.
yeah.
So the traps people fall into is one, they don't want to wait 5 years. And I'm like, listen, you've been waiting your whole life. What's another 5 years to be
Yeah.
free, right?
Exactly.
And the second thing is people have this thing in their head where they don't believe it actually exists. And that's my hardest part as a coach is to
Yeah.
show people this does exist and yes, you can do it.
Mm,
And once they get that out of their head, people are buying 2, 3, 5 in their first month, and then they start
yeah.
rocking and rolling. But in the beginning, it's hard just to get past those hurdles in our own brains,
Mm.
saying that, well, if it was, everybody loves to say, if it was that easy, everybody would do it. I'm like, I don't know why everyone doesn't do it. I'm always talking. I'm like, how come everybody's not doing this?
Because you're not on all the pockets and everything else. And I think the biggest part is, you look at the Chris Crones of the world and all these guys, Grant Cardone. Oh, you can be flying around on a jet and all that. Well, your strategy, you're not going to be flying around on a jet, but
Yeah.
I can go sit on a beach for an entire month and make 20 grand and
Yeah.
I'm
So
good. I have to do that.
you're
Yeah.
exactly right with that. So I tell people with my program and people that join my program, I said, we are not teaching you to get, not to mean you can't do it. It'll just take longer. We're not teaching you to have Lamborghinis and jets and yachts and
Mhm.
all of that stuff. I am teaching people, just like you do, Jeff, how to be free, how to
Yeah.
wake up in the morning and do whatever we want. And I already forgot your term for it, which I loved. What was it?
Work
Uh,
optional lifestyle.
Work optional. I love that. And that is exactly it. That's the basis of what we teach. It's not to get a jet. Now,
Mm,
mind you, some people have higher ambitions and they can still continue on this path till they get that sort of stuff. But that's not what this is about. This is
mm.
about getting 10 or 20 grand a month and being free to do whatever it is you want, to live a work optional lifestyle. I love that term.
Yeah, well, and I mean the cool part is, and this doesn't require a ton of work. It's not like a burst strategy where you're managing a back end project and trying to get this thing up and ready, and then find a renter, and then refinance and all that, and bank
We
credit.
don't even mow the lawn. We don't clean them out. If they're filled with stuff, we do them exactly as is.
That is awesome. That is
Most of
awesome.
the houses I've never even seen. Like
Okay.
I don't go out there. I mean, so I have houses all over. I've never seen them. I have
Hmm.
somebody go do pictures and videos, someone put a lockbox on, and then we do the paperwork. And I've never actually gone and like seen the house, nor do
Yeah.
I want to.
Yeah. Well, and that's the beautiful thing of it, and you're still making a nice little profit on the sale price of it and everything at that point. And like I said, then you're writing it as a private mortgage at that point,
Right.
correct?
And amortization schedules, but a lot of people don't. But $875 on a 30-year mortgage comes out over 30 years to $315,000 they end up paying us for this
Per
house
property.
that we got the 30,000, which we didn't even pay the 34. We had a private lender pay for it.
Yeah.
So when you do the math on how much we get back on each one, it's staggering.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. I love the strategy. I mean, once again, it's the simplest strategies that everybody overlooks. They want to make things so freaking complicated when it comes to real estate and all these techniques and all that to get zero down. I mean, you're basically doing zero down.
Yeah, we don't use, and believe me, I have people that have come from all walks of life. They
Yeah.
have nothing to start with, and they have built a life with it because that's the whole program is to
Yeah.
do it with no money. The reason this opportunity exists is because there's a gap in the marketplace, and that gap is the sellers on these houses need
Mm.
cash to sell.
Yeah.
The buyers need financing to buy, and
Yep.
yet the banks won't finance them because they don't want to do these small loans for $30,000.
Yep.
So we basically just step in the middle. We give the seller the cash and we give the buyer the financing, and then we step back out of it and just collect our checks.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's absolutely beautiful. No, I love it. I mean, once again, it's the simplest strategy ever. And you don't even have to have a team on the ground that manages the property and cleans it up
Right.
and all this kind of crap that you have to have.
I'm an
And
army of
I've got,
one. Yeah.
yeah, an army of one. I don't really have to have anything. I just have to be there to negotiate the deals and go from there, which I think is
Yep.
fantastic. Now, do you have kind of an army of hard money lenders that you work with, or?
Private lenders. So we don't use hard money. Typical hard money lenders, they want to do a short term, like 6 months. So we raise, and I teach this because this is the most critical part of it. We teach and we raise private money from private individuals, not people who
Mm,
are in the industry, not people who are lenders, just
mm,
people who have money in their bank account or in a 401k or in retirement, and we pay a 12% return. So they love us.
yeah.
Mostly all of our lenders, since I started this in 2011, have stemmed from our other lenders.
Okay.
Once they run out of money, they start bragging to their friends how much they're making. Next thing you know, their friends saying, "Hey, see if he needs any more." And
Mm,
all of our lenders have stemmed from our other lenders.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. What made you come up with this? Was this somebody else was doing it, or you just kind of figured it out?
No, nobody was doing it. I mean, people have always done this in some facet or another. Basically, what made ours unique is that we took both sides together. People forever has sold houses with owner
Yeah.
financing, so we didn't
Sure.
invent that. And what we did is invent, and maybe people were already doing it, the combination of buying them on short-term money and then selling them on long-term money. So
Mm,
people have always sold with owner financing, but we're also buying them and paying them off in 5 years, which is
mm,
kind of the big differentiator. And the reason was, I want to say necessity, but it was also getting smacked around by the bust,
yeah.
where I was like, I'm willing to suffer, but I am not willing to go through what we're going through again, which
Mm,
meant I'll jump back in the fire, but I am not going to start over again, meaning I'll do whatever for 5 years. But now once I hit that I was going to call it, I would say my freedom number, but I was going to use your term and say
yeah.
freedom day. Once you hit that day, I said, now there is no going back. No matter
Yeah.
what happens in the world, no matter what the Fed decides, whatever happens in the economy, it doesn't affect us anymore because they're free and clear.
Yeah. What are you typically offering the buyers on your end as far as financing rate?
It ends up being somewhere generally between 9 and 11.5. It
Okay.
depends on the purchase price because sometimes it's 69 to 99, average is 89. But the interesting thing is, as the purchase price changes, 69, 89, 99, the payment generally stays the same. So nothing really changes except the interest rate.
Yeah.
In 875 over 30 years is still 315,000. Whether or not you paid 69 for it or 99 for it,
Yeah.
you still paid 315 in the end.
Yeah.
So that's why the interest rate may fluctuate a little bit.
That's brilliant. Well, and like I said, I mean, it's the simplest thing, and you're not really holding property, which is awesome. I mean, you're
Yeah.
holding an asset, which is the financing on it. And I mean, kind of worst case scenario in your spot is somebody stops paying on the property and you still own the property at that point.
Yep. And one of the sayings I always tell people, I say, because people are like, well, why would they pay this much for it? Why wouldn't they do it this way? Why wouldn't they do it that way? And I always say, we sell the financing, the house comes with it.
Mhm.
What we're
Yeah,
actually selling is the financing. That's
brilliant.
what people are buying. They're buying the ability because ours they can buy. The other ones might be a better deal, but you got to pay cash and they don't have the cash.
Yeah,
Mine, you only need 3 grand down.
yeah,
So that's what we're selling is the opportunity. We're selling the financing.
that is fantastic. I love this, man. It's just, like I said, it's the greatest idea and it's the most innovative one I've seen in a long time. Because
I
everybody else
absolutely
is
love
the
it.
same.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's changed everything for me. And mind you, I started in 2011 doing this model.
okay.
And it wasn't until 2016 where the skies opened up because during those first few years, we were still doing all this work, but we weren't making any money because
Hmm.
it's going to service your lenders. It wasn't until 2016 where all of a sudden it was like, now we get to
Yeah,
keep all the money. And it
yeah.
changed everything from then.
Well, and I mean, you could combine this strategy. Let's say you're somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of money working at it. I mean, you're going after the same properties that you would
Yep.
if you were if you were doing like a wholesale deal.
Well, that's what I teach my
Need
people. I
money.
say wholesale and
Yeah.
slow flip. Wholesale
Yeah.
for now, slow flip for the future. Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. It's like, okay, so do the little wholesale deal. I mean, take the deals that you don't want to really keep. Okay, great. Just flip those deals over to somebody else. You make a little, spread on there, 5 to 10 grand. That pays you while you're waiting. And the rest of the time you're out there searching for the exact same properties that you're looking for in this case, and just keep the like that. So I think
Yep.
my guess is you've got to cultivate those investors is the main thing first.
Yep. Well, we try and do them simultaneously. It's one of those cart before the horse things,
Yeah.
because if you find the property and don't have a lender, you can't close. If you have a lender and don't have a property, then they're like, well, I said yes, but I can't, I got to deploy my money or else I got to find something else to do. So
Yeah.
I'm always telling my people, I said, you got to do them both simultaneously.
Mhm.
We're constantly looking for lenders and we're constantly looking for properties.
Nice. Nice. Well, I'm just amazed. I think it's phenomenal. What's new in the world? What else are you doing right now, or what do you have on the table?
Unrelated to business, I'll tell you what, I just, something I was working on today, which is why I'm telling you, I just closed on a house in the Bahamas that I bought.
Nice.
That is my plan. Now, I was originally going to wait. My son's 14, and my original plan was to wait until he left for college. But me and my wife decided, let's just do it now. And we did. And so I'm real excited about it. It's on the island of Bimini, and it's just absolutely
Nice.
beautiful.
Now,
And
are you guys going to move there permanently, or just use it kind of on and off?
the intent is for the next 4 years to just do holidays, and because we're on the school
Okay.
schedule now. But then
Yeah,
after he leaves, we're going to do the winters. We'll do December, January, February, March, something like that, 3 or 4 months a year.
I love that. Yeah, when everybody back home is sitting under 3 feet of snow, yeah, you're going to be
Yes,
sitting on under 3 feet of sand.
exactly.
Well, cool. Well, let's transition to the fast 5 questions now. You ready?
Sure thing.
All right. So, first question: you wake up in the morning, and this is kind of related for you. You wake up in the morning, business is totally gone. You have $500 in your pocket, laptop, computer, a place to live. What are you going to do first?
So I'm going to do more or less exactly what I do now. I'm going to have to, if forget the 500 because it doesn't take any money. I'm going to have to start networking for lenders,
Mhm.
private lenders, and networking for buyers, not so much the sellers. If I was going to use the 500, that's what I would use it for, is to do some marketing to try and
Sure.
locate some sellers. And again, we're going to have to do it simultaneously, because we can't just slow flip, or else that's going to be a rough 5 years if I only got $500 to eat on for 5 years. So we're going to have to wholesale and slow flips so that when we pass the 5 years, we're free, but wholesaling for the interim.
I love it. Love it. What's the biggest business mistake you've ever made?
Well, I've made quite a few, but I've made quite a few. I'm trying to think of, I don't know if I'd say the one I lost the most money on or the biggest mistake, but I guess if I was to say biggest mistake, it would be subscribing to the leverage and debt theory that the world teaches. And I talk about 2005 Scott as another person, but the reality is he's still everywhere now, because
Yeah.
most people are doing exactly that. And that's kind of why I got into teaching. I was shocked after the bus that I couldn't wait to go to the next seminar to see what they were teaching now, because I'm like, well, surely that didn't work. What's the new strategy? And they were teaching the exact same
Same
thing. And I was like, oh my
strategy.
God, we already know what can happen, and now you're
Yeah.
telling people the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably my biggest mistake, was believing what everyone taught, which was leverage and debt, and when be in debt up to your eyeballs, and that's the way to get rich. And granted, that does work, but it's
Mhm.
a whole different program that
Yeah.
I don't want to participate in
Well,
anymore.
and I mean, it's that you have to understand that, like you could easily lose everything in one shot. Very
Yeah.
easily lose everything, or lose a very large chunk of what you have at that point.
And the flip side is it may never happen again. And everybody who's
Yeah.
doing that will be just fine.
Yeah.
And they'll laugh at me and be like, man, if Scott knew what he was doing, he would have made so much more. And they're right. But I'm okay with what I have. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
lot. And so I'm like, it's okay that I don't have more. I
Mhm.
read in a book recently, and you probably read the same books, and I can't remember the name of this one, but there was a sentence in it that really resonated with me. And he said, I have something most people will never have: enough. And I
Yeah.
really love that, because I say that all the time. People are like, well, why don't you do this? And why don't you do this? And I'm like, for what? So I can make more money that I'm not going to spend? I'm like,
Yeah.
I have enough. I love
Yeah.
doing what I do, but I don't need to do anything crazy that's going to
Well,
take more of
but
my life or more pressure or stress.
well, and the cool part about what you do is you're never going to run into the situation that most real estate investors run into. They start being successful, And then what happens? They end up hitting the wall of, well, the bank ain't going to give you any more money, dude. So the
Right.
only other solution is now I got to go find partners to come in and put down the money, put down their credit, and then I got to manage those relationships and everything else and keep that thing going. And that's the only way I can scale the business at
Yep.
that point. So
Absolutely.
I love what you, because yours is infinitely scalable, and it's infinitely scalable. And you also can go, you know what, I'm going to take a month off and just do nothing if I
Yep.
want to, or I can go to Bimini and hang out on the beach for a month and I don't have to worry
Or
about
four.
anything
Yeah.
because I know the beginning of the month there's going to be a big pile of checks rolling into the mailbox.
So many years ago, during this transition time, it's funny that you said that. I was at a casino playing craps with one of my
Okay.
lenders, and he, he had a few drinks, and he said, and he was, and mind you, he never played big money. He was playing probably $500 or $1,000, but he was losing. And he said something to me, and I was like, "How much are you down?" And he's like, "I could lose every penny I have on the planet." Mind you, he's got tens of millions of dollars. He says, "I could lose every penny I have on the planet, and on the first of the month, I have 80 grand again." And I was like, man, it was a different mindset from what I was doing at the time when I was doing
Yep.
with all the leverage. I'm like, man, that is a great position to be in where if everything went to crap, you just got to wait a few more days and there's
Yep.
another 80 grand coming in.
Yep. Exactly. I just always need to make sure I keep about $1,000 around so that I don't go into the hole and then I know I've got money coming in. That's beautiful.
Yep.
What's a good book that you would recommend for our audience?
I read a lot of books, but one of the ones that I like to recommend because and probably everybody's read this already, but it really had a transitionary in my mind thing for me, which is the 4 Hour Work Week. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that because it was kind of one of the ones that was talking more about like what we're saying. It's not
Yep.
about chasing more money. It's about
Yep.
chasing your life and living your life. And I've really lived by it. I remember that's one of the few books I've read multiple times and I enjoy it every time I read it because it resonates with me.
Well, and the funny thing is, a few people have brought that book up. It is one of the, I put out a list earlier this year of the top 10 books that helped me get to my financial freedom. And that is number 2 on my list was the 4 Hour Work Week, because I've literally read the thing 3 times a year for the last, ever since the second book was published. So I have this dog-eared, messed up
Yep.
copy of the book that I just keep reading over and over again.
What was number one?
Number 1 was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh, okay.
That the
Excellent.
first financial book I ever read. Didn't have a clue of what I was doing, but it changed my whole mindset early on. I'm a little thick-headed, so it took me another like 15 years to get to the point where I actually took the risk and went ahead and did what he suggests. But it always changed my mindset and it made me think differently as a result of that.
Nice.
What is a tool that you use in your business every day that you might recommend?
I guess a tool, a tool that I would say, as simple as it may seem, but it's my whole business is built around it, is an
Mm.
amortization calculator right in my
Okay.
phone. And most people don't really appreciate an amortization calculator until you start playing with the numbers. And for those people who don't know what it is, basically, if you have a mortgage on your own house and you send in $1,000 payment, you'll notice when you get next month's statement, they took off like $120 of principal and the rest of it was interest. And then the
Yeah.
month after that, it was $121 in principal and the rest was interest. And that's an amortization schedule. And I love it. I always hated it all my life when I was paying mortgages. But
When
now that I'm
you're on the
collecting
opposite
mortgages,
end of the spectrum.
exactly. Now that you're on the opposite end, I'm like, I love amortization schedules. I'm like, who came up with this? It's genius. I love it because
Bankers
they can
did.
pay you. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Bankers did. Exactly.
The funny thing is, people always ask me, "What did you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, if I knew what I knew now, I would want to be a banker. I wouldn't want to own a bank. I don't want to be a banker. I want to own a bank
Yeah.
because I mean, and you basically own your own bank effectively, your own finance
Yep.
company at that.
Absolutely.
That's genius. Love it. All right, final question. What is your definition of freedom?
So it probably is the same as you're using with your Freedom Day, but I think the definition of freedom, and I use it 2 different ways, but one is to be able to wake up in the morning and do whatever it is you want to do. If
Hmm.
you leave your house or don't leave your house, if you decide to go boating or don't go boating, it's to the ability to do whatever it is you want to do. Now, it doesn't mean that you do that every day because we obviously still have responsibilities, but the ability to. And the other thing is, and if you were to say, what's your definition of financial freedom? I think it's the ability to say no to opportunities
Yeah.
because I remember when I would have said yes to everybody's like, you want to make some money? You want to make some money? There's so many different, there's a million ways to make $1 million, right? And I would say, choose
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Any one of them will work, but you can't do all of them.
Mm,
And I think the ability to say no to opportunity is really when you're free. When
mm,
somebody's like, "Oh man, I got this great deal. You can make X amount. All you got to do is," and to say, and this is the way I answer because it's kind of a wise ass, but not really. I'll say something like, "You go make all the money. Don't worry about me. You go make all the money." And and that's the way I say no, because yes, I agree it's a good opportunity, but I don't need any more opportunities. I know
mm.
exactly what I'm doing. We're crushing it doing it, and so I don't even look outside of it. I'm like, just stay in your lane and keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. Well, once again, and you shouldn't have to, and it's infinitely scalable. I mean, if
Yeah,
you have 900 properties, I mean, it's just continues to scale because you're not constrained by capital on your side, which I think is just
right.
brilliant.
Yep.
And it's a 5-year plan. And if you're not willing to, like you said, it's a 5-year plan. If you aren't willing to put in the time for the 5 years, then you've put it in all your life. Why not take the 5 years now?
One of the reasons that people don't like the program, like when I'll talk to somebody online or something, they'll say, "Oh, that all sounds fine, but I need to make money right now." And I'll ask them, "Well, how old are you?" And they could be 45, 50, 55, 30. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, "Well, you've already been doing whatever business you're in for 30 years. How about if you had started this now, 5 years from now, you'll never have to say that again." Yeah,
Mm,
but I need money right now. I'm like, that's because that's what you've been doing all along, is making money
yeah,
right now and not focusing on your future. I end all
yeah,
my meetings with my coaching people with saying, do something today your future self is going to thank you for. And I do
yeah.
that purposefully because I do the same thing. I'm constantly doing deals where I'm like, I'll do it. What the heck? I know I'm not going to make anything now, but in 5 years, I'll be glad I did it. Because now I'll
Mhm.
have another 20 houses that are free and clear. I'll get a bump of 20 grand a month. And I'm like, let's go ahead and do it. Because
Yeah.
I'm planning for my 5 year self.
That's just absolutely genius. Well, and I mean, the worst case scenario is they refinance. I mean, really, the worst case for you is they refinance and your money train, you get a bunch of
And you buy
money and
three
your
more.
money train
Yeah.
goes away. Yeah.
And you buy three more with that same money. Right.
Yeah. Which is hilarious. That's hilarious. Well, cool, man. Thank you so much. If somebody wants to learn more about what you do and maybe learn more about how to do this, what's the best place?
That's actually, I forgot to tell you earlier, Jeff. So I wrote a book called The Art of the Slow Flip, and
Uh-huh.
it basically goes through absolutely everything from start to finish on how to raise money, on how to find the properties, how we fill them, everything. And I'm going to give all of your listeners a free copy of it so they can just get it
That's
at
amazing.
slowflip.com,
Okay.
slowflip.com, and just pay shipping. And I'm going to send them out a free copy of it. And the reason I really like people to start that way is because some people will read it and they know instantly that's their life's mission, right? Other
Hmm.
people will read it and they will hate it and they would be like, nope, what's the next thing? I do not like this at all. And that's okay. It's not for everyone, right? It's not for everyone because some people hate it because they're like, but I love my houses. And what if they buy them all? And I'm like, okay, but we're not in love with our houses. To us, our houses are pieces of paper. We just
Yep.
shuffle papers. But if you want to love your house, then you're not going to like slow flips, right? And if you want to have pride in your houses and paint them and put on a special light fixture, you're not going to like this program. But
Nope.
if you just want to shuffle papers and collect checks, then that's what this is
Yeah.
about. It's all about freedom and not just, and that's why
I
I always tell you, I say, read the book first and then you know where to go from there.
you and I are from the same cloth. I mean, I could care less what the place looks like, and most of the places I own, I've never even seen.
Yeah,
So,
me too. I've been to seminars where the guys are talking. They're like, "I'll never buy a house I wouldn't live in," and I'm like, "Ooh, I don't think I'd
yeah,
live in any of mine. Maybe I got three or four I'd live in if I had to.
I'm
I
not
own
even driving through the
178
neighborhood.
now.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah, I'm
even
like,
driving through the neighborhood that these things are in.
I have 178 houses now, and I think maybe three or four of them I would live in if I had to. But
Yeah,
no, they're not houses I would live in. That's not their
and
purpose.
even for that, it wouldn't be for very long. So,
Exactly. It's not their purpose.
well, Scott, thank you so much, dude. This was phenomenal. I'm looking forward to reading the book. I'm actually going to sign up as we talk about here because I can't wait to read the book either. But folks, take this opportunity. I mean, this is probably the most innovative idea I've seen this year or the last few years. It's not the same regurgitated crap that people teach when it comes to real estate. So, yes, it may not be the place where you're going to make $1 billion, but that's okay. You don't need $1 billion to live. So thanks a
And
lot.
the other,
Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say the other thing is most of those things that are teaching you to make $1 billion in a Lamborghini and a yacht, you're not going to make it there either.
Yeah.
It's just it's a pitch. It's a pitch, and that's why I tried to turn it all on its head and be like, listen, let's just be real, be realistic. Our objective, which is the same as yours, Jeff, is to set you
Yeah.
free, not to get you a yacht and a Lamborghini.
Well, and the funny thing is, if you've ever driven a Lamborghini, it's the most uncomfortable car to drive on the planet. So, I came to that reality myself, and the listeners know this, but one of the things I teach is bucket listing. So build a bucket list, build things. So one of the things on my bucket list is I wanted to drive a Lamborghini at the F1 track here in Austin.
Nice.
Cost $450. Boom. 2 or 3 of your properties, I have the money and I can go do that one time and be done.
Yep.
Or I could do it every month.
I rented one in Vegas once, and I drove it out to the Hoover Dam and back. I had a good day. It was a fun experience, but I have no desire to own one.
Yeah, I know. Well, I have to go to the chiropractor after I get out of the thing because I'm 6'3", so it's not much fun.
Yeah, I'm 6'3" as well.
Yeah. So you're a fellow sufferer on those things.
Yep.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for being on. And folks, take his offer up. Make sure that you go to his website. We'll put that in the show notes page. And as always, make sure that you subscribe to the channel wherever you're watching or listening to this. And when you do that, give us a little up arrow or give us a 5-star rating. Comment. Love to hear what you think about this stuff. Once again, this is something new that I haven't heard, and I think we're onto something here for those that really want to build that Freedom Day where you can just show up to the mailbox once a month. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys back here the very next time.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
All in you, everything